I'm Matt Bishar with Nareit here in Hollywood, Florida for Nareit's REITwise, the 2018 Law, Accounting, and Finance Conference. Joining me today is Mike McTiernan, partner with Hogan Lovells. Mike, thanks so much for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Now, you've had the opportunity to approach REIT SEC issues as both a senior lawyer in the SEC's Division of Corporate Finance, as well as a partner in a global law firm, Hogan Lovells. Do the issues seem different depending on what side of the table you're approaching them from?
I'd say two big differences. I'd say the first is now as a partner at Hogan, when I have an issue, I'm focused on it from the perspective of my client. And it's very narrow. It's really just what matters to my client. When you're in the government, particularly at the SEC, and you get a question in like that, you're not just thinking about that one company. And in fact, you're not even just thinking about the impact of that issue on REITs. You have to be thinking about how does your answer to that impact all public companies? So you have to be very, very sensitive about that. I'd say that's one big difference. The kind of flip side, though, is when you're at the SEC, you can really be focused on a somewhat narrow amount of issues. Like, for instance, when you're in the REIT group there, you're focused on IPOs, you're focused on 10Ks. And I feel pretty good when I was at the SEC on those topics. When you come out into private practice, the breadth of what you have to worry about is unbelievable. And it goes well beyond those items. It goes beyond securities laws. It now gets into a lot of corporate governance. You've got ISS, you've got IR issues. So in that sense, in private practice, just the sheer breadth of things that you have to be up to date on is much, much greater.
Now, while you were at the SEC, you also spearheaded guidance applicable to public non-listed REITs. With the benefit of hindsight, has that guidance been helpful to the P&LR sector?
I'm pretty proud of what we did. I think you heard Sonia Barros from the SEC talk about rulemaking initiatives that they have ongoing, and kind of citing that a lot of those rules haven't been updated since 1960. And it was frustrating when you were there of dealing with all these old rules. And so much developed over the last 30 years in terms of kind of lore, kind of what the CorpFin staff was doing, but what wasn't in the rules. And there's a real inefficiency to that. There's almost an unfairness to that people who come to conferences like this and get to hear you talk, they all know what they need to do, but there's nothing written anywhere that actually tells you that. So it kind of creates barriers to entry to putting out good disclosure, and that's not something the SEC would ever want. And I think CorpFin, to its credit, created this ability for the staff to basically put out guidance like we put out in a more informal way of saying this is what the staff is going to be expecting you to provide. And I think that the non-traded REIT industry appreciated us putting that out there. I think it's made it easier for them to put out disclosures that are consistent with what the staff wants. So pretty proud of that.
And lastly, this is the first year that the SEC's pay ratio rules apply. Can you comment on how difficult it's been for REITs to comply with this? I
think a lot of us, when those rules came out, and they were rules, frankly, that were political in nature. It wasn't something that I think we felt like investors that we talked to every day were really clamoring for. And with the change in administration, and control of Congress, I think all of us frankly felt that those were going to be shot down, and we kept getting closer to the implementation date, and then I think we said, oh geez, we're going to actually have to comply with these. I think most of us in this space were pleasantly surprised that when you finally dug into it, a lot of the concerns that other industries had really weren't applicable to us. That REITs, in terms of the size of the workforce, are smaller than kind of a lot of other larger companies. It's mainly US based. So a lot of the complexity to it, a lot of the interpretive issues, we didn't have to worry about. So I think complying with it wasn't difficult. And then it really came down to, what's your number? Do you got a bad number or do you have a good number? And I think for folks who had a good number, meaning that the multiple of CEO pay over median pay was kind of in line with other large companies, you really didn't do much with it, and it was very, very easy to just be done with it. If you happen to have a situation where your workforce, just the nature of your business is that the median employee is someone who's making a relatively small number, and therefore the CEO is a huge multiple, I think those folks had to spend more time on it, not so much to address investor issues, but I think everyone was sensitive to kind of HR issues, to PR issues. So I think those folks had to maybe spend more time on it than other folks did. But overall, thankfully, it was not that hard.
Mike, thanks so much for joining us.
Great.
For more from REITwise, be sure to visit Nareit's website, REIT.com.